if I had one thing to say to leadership that might be listening is please try to think about the long game here. Right now, last year, 1,500,000 people were laid off. That's a lot of people that have got to be reabsorbed into the workplace. But they will be reabsorbed. And once they're reabsorbed, then who's left is this entering Gen Z young millennial population. And if we don't pay attention to them, it may be 3, 4 years from now before you feel the pain, but it'll bite you.
Hi there, I am Denise Chaffin, and I am your podcast host for Talking TA. And today I am honored to have with me Ellen Raim. Ellen, I've been following you for quite a while now. I love your LinkedIn posts. Ellen is the early career advisor, and her company is called People Matter LLC. And so, Ellen, give us a little bit of information about your background. Before you start, though, I want to just say our conversation is going to be on hiring shortcuts that can erode or build trust. And with that, Ellen, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce yourself more.
Thanks. So, let me tell you a little bit about how I've ended up doing what I do. I started my career as an employment lawyer, and so I saw only when things inside of a company went so bad that people sued their employers. And that didn't feel very fulfilling, and it didn't help very much in building corporate culture. And so I went from there inside of a company, and I thought, okay, well, if I'm a lawyer inside of a company, I'll be able to fix things more quickly and maybe help with culture. And that wasn't that much better because if you have a sign around your neck that says lawyer, nobody wants to talk to you. So then I switched over into HR, and that was the first time that I was able to really help make a difference in terms of employee experience or culture. And I worked my way through various organizations all the way up to the C-suite and became the chief human resources officer at a couple of companies. The last company I was with went bankrupt, and I had to let everyone go, and that was heart-wrenching. And after that, when I was trying to think about what really lit me up and where I thought I could really add value, I decided that I would try to do some things with early career professionals. And one of the impetus for that was the fact that I have a daughter who's a Gen Z right now, and she would call me every day and say, "Mom, I got this problem, and my boss just said this, and I don't know what to do about it." And so I would help her, kind of somewhere between mom and HR professional. And she has a million friends. And so I would be getting these texts from people I didn't know, and it would say something like, "Hi, my name is Jennifer, and you don't know me, but I'm a friend of your daughter's, and she says you give really good work advice. So would you help me?" And so the work actually came to me. And from there, I built a business around it. And now, not only do I help young folks who are already in their jobs, but given the nature of the economy right now, I am helping a lot of uh, graduates, kids who just graduated from college and have been out for a while and haven't been able to land something in a field close to where they'd like to work. And so I'm helping them build job search plans and strategies and doing a lot of help with that and cheerleading and accountability partner and those kinds of things.
That's amazing. Good for you. That's awesome. Oh my gosh, good karma.
Folks, so
Really. And not only that, but there's so many people entering the workforce, and they do need help and they need direction. And yeah, the marketplace is tough right now. And so
yeah, the market is not very good right now. And I read a statistic yesterday that said 40% of all kids that graduated last year are still looking for uh, sort of white collar jobs. And that's a lot of people.
wow.
So I'm trying to help there, but and sort of another interesting statistic around this same topic is by 2030, even with the market the way it is, Gen Z will be 30% of the workforce, and if you include younger millennials who they by the way, they call Zennials because they think so much like Gen Z, it'll be 50% of the workforce. So there's gonna be a culture change pretty soon just because of the balance of generations inside.
So let's talk about some of the workplace norms that we're hearing about for the Gen Z population. What are you hearing from them on what they want and what some of their current issues are, so we can kind of tie it into this conversation?
So I'll answer this for you in a couple of ways. I'll tell you about what some of the biggest generational frictions are, which kind of gives you an idea what Gen Z wants versus what sort of Gen X and the youngest boomers that are still working are thinking about. So there's a big difference in communication preferences. So Gen Z likes fast, quick, short communications. They're used to texting and slacking, and Gen X wants FaceTime, and there's a sort of a respect issue around that. I want you to come to my office, and I want you to have a conversation with me as opposed to dropping me a short email or a text. Um, Gen Z is much more facile with technology, and a lot of times Gen X and older generations think that they want apps just for the sake of apps, and so they're not as willing to look at what's new. Some Gen Z wants to use AI because it is efficient. Gen X sometimes thinks that that's lazy. And so you can sort of see that the same things when you think differently cause like a lot of tension. Gen Z is very, very interested in learning and career uh, progression. And the reason for that is Gen X, those of us that have come up already, we were sort of raised with this idea that if you work hard and you wait your turn and you pay your dues, you're going to get rewarded for that and you're going to climb the ladder. But Gen Z doesn't see that promise about work hard and you will be rewarded. It's not quite as solid anymore, and so they are hyper focused on moving ahead and learning, and so they are very commonly found to leave jobs because they feel like they're not going to either grow so that they can go get a bigger job somewhere else, or they can see the pathway to a bigger job in your organization. One of the biggest frustrations is around work-life balance or work-life boundaries. So, when we were coming up, we believed that being seen and working was the way that we were going to climb the ladder, and Gen Z just doesn't believe that. They watched their parents get laid off. They're watching what's happening now in the world around jobs, and they're trying to take back some of their life. So those are some of and the last one I think is transparency, which is one of the most important ones. So it's transparency around pay, it's transparency around why decisions are made. So if somebody is hired, why did they get hired? If somebody wasn't hired and they were on an interview team, why did the person not get hired? How are the salaries set up? So they really expect organizations to include them and to sort of be transparent and ethical. And I think that earlier generations, there was a sort of belief that you should just be happy you have a job and do your job and, you know, don't rock the boat, don't make waves. So those are some of the things that Gen Z wants and some of the tensions.
And they're really kind of not afraid to make some waves in order to be heard and to have people understand where they're coming from. That's been my experience.
Yes, your experience is right on. That is absolutely true.
Yeah, it is, and I don't blame them. I've never minded making waves, and when I did, I would be shot down sometimes because it's like, same thing. "Hey, you're lucky to have a job. You're lucky to have this position," and that type of thing. Talking about Gen Z and how they're not afraid to rock the boat, I recall being in a similar situation many years ago, and I got the same response from people telling me, "Hey, you need to just be happy you've got a job, or you've got this contract, or you've got this position, etc." But I have to admire them that they're not afraid to rock the boat. I really do, and I think that, like you said, we're going to have 50% of the workforce will be either millennials or zillennials and Gen Z. By what year did you say?
2030, pretty soon.
2030. So 4 years. In 4 years. So we need to kind of, I think, capitulate a bit to what they're asking for. And a lot of people say, well, they just need experience. But they've grown up in a whole different culture. And you mentioned something too about the digital age that they've grown up in. And so let's talk about that for a moment, because I think there is a lack of trust because they want to follow their social media, they want to follow what they've learned in the digital age. So what are some of the, I think, trust factors? Let's talk about that. And when they're hiring and when they're interviewing, what are some of the trust factor issues that you're hearing from them?
So let me let me answer the question broadly, and then we want more details, we can dig in. So there's three kinds of trust problems that happen intergenerationally. So one is based on values. So that's like, you don't respect me. I don't think you respect me. Whatever you just said or did was a diss, right? It shows that you don't value me for what I bring to the table. And that's on both sides, right? So if if you tell me you're relying on apps way too much and you're not really doing the work yourself, that is a sign of disrespect. You don't believe that I understand the work you want me to do, and I'm just looking for a way to be efficient. The flip side, you can understand with an older generation, like let's say an employee says, you know what, I don't go back online after 6 o'clock at night, so don't even try to bother to reach out to me. An older worker in the office, like the boss, is hearing, you don't value your job. You don't, I'm not important enough to you that you're gonna Jeff gonna tell you to jump. So values based. Second one is behavior based. And that means like I can't think past the norms of my generation. So um, I have worked with young folks. I worked with a young woman, and she said, "I've been at this job for 2.5 years, and I think it's time to be promoted. So I am just gonna walk into my boss's office, and I am gonna tell her that it's time, and she better do something about it right this minute." So I had to back her up and say, "Put yourself in the shoes of your boss. Try to understand, like, what is making your boss tick, what's important to them, and then let's craft what you're gonna say in a way that she can hear it." So that's like I can't think past the norms of how I grew up and my generation. And then the last one is what they call identity based, and that is, uh, you I y like, I don't think that you don't think that I'm smart. I'm mad or I'm sad because you don't think that I'm smart. So, it's that one is from a sort of like, uh, if your boss, so, like, this comes up a lot where bosses say to employ we all grew up where no news was good news, right? Like, your boss didn't sit with you all the time and give you feedback constantly. Gen Z grew up where they were they had lessons and play dates and those kinds of things where somebody was always hovering over them and giving them feedback. So they expect basic honestly, they come by it honestly, they expect feedback all along the way because they've always gotten feedback along the way. And when a boss might say to a Gen Z employee, like, "Figure it out yourself, go away." They don't actually say go away, hope most bosses, but out yourself, or they give them very little feedback, then a Gen Z employee might have an identity-based trust issue, which is, you don't you're gonna let me fail here. You don't think I'm smart. You don't think I can do this. Why won't you help me so I can do a good job? So again, so much of this is communication, all based on the culture, the way we interpret the workplace based on the culture that we grew up in, and without some kind of Rosetta Stone or decoder, people are just gonna keep bumping into each other.
Some of the younger Gen Zs have recently been sharing with me some of their new lingo. I mean, they actually have their own lingo, and so I'm trying to learn it. I mean, it's more social lingo than it is professional lingo, but I'm sure that they'll eventually come together at some point. So when you talk about communication, it's a matter of not just learning what they want, but learning how they talk and understanding their way of communicating.
Like, I've read some articles where companies in San Francisco, they're hiring etiquette coaches. I don't really think you need an etiquette coach for Gen Z. I think it it's just they're just not as familiar with how to speak in a workplace, and so I think that this is gentle coaching all the way along. And I think what's interesting to me is there are certain workplaces where I think that leadership is placing all of the, for lack of a better way to say this, all of the blame on the Gen Z early professionals, and they're saying, "I had to figure it out, you figure it out," and they're not aiding in any way. But I think that with a little bit of gentle coaching and a little bit of attention, this is the most educated generation there ever. They're smart kids. They're
They
smart young
are.
people. They
They
just need
are.
a little bit of guidance.
Yeah. So, we have one of the things I want to talk about was hiring shortcuts that we're taking, right? When it comes to interviewing and hiring well, anybody for that matter, not just Gen Z or the millennials. We're running into some issues with hiring shortcuts, and I know that AI is being blamed for some, but I think that we as people need to take responsibility on what we are doing to kind of restrict that transparency, communication, feedback loop. I mean, the feedback loop is huge. And it's something that not just Gen Z, maybe they're announcing the lack of feedback and transparency more than the other generations just because we've been taught to stifle ourselves, but at the same time, it's a problem that we're all facing. So when you're speaking with them with the I guess maybe fresh out of college, young adults, when you're speaking with people who are getting ready to go into college or are in college, who fit the Gen Z or the Zillennial generation, what are they telling you are some of the issues that they're running into that create hiring shortcuts that are causing problems?
Yeah, so remember, a lot of these kids are struggling to even get jobs, and so they tell me about the interview process a lot, and, um, they and some of this is naivete on their part. So the last statistic I read said that just applying online to Indeed or LinkedIn, you have about a somewhere between a 3 and 5% success rate, anybody. And so, but this is what they do because they're naturally drawn to technology. So they're applying online and doing something all the time that has a 97% failure rate. So one of the first things that erodes trust for them is lots of people's applicant tracking systems are not set up to send back any kind of um, email or whatever that says, "We got your application," or "Your thank you very much, but you've not been chosen to move forward." So that they just hear nothing, and that they find that in as I think most people do, they find it very frustrating. And but what's different about Gen Z, again, like you just said, than those of us that are older that might be looking for jobs is they don't tolerate it a lot. So these kind of things end up on TikTok and Instagram where they will talk about their experiences. And in some respects, good for them, right? Because I think all of us would like more trust and more transparency in the interview process, in the hiring process. Um, but we were taught not to speak up. So again, one of the first things is ghosting. Another another thing is right now, interview processes are they're all v- they all feel haphazard. So some are you have an interview, and then you have a second interview, then you have to do a test, then you have another set of interview. Goes on, and it lasts for a really long time, and you're not getting any feedback along the way about, are you worthy? Are you progressing? And so interviewing has gotten very, very difficult without and like I said, they're used to feedback, so without a lot of feedback, and then at the end, let's say they weren't the early career professional chosen, again, they just get an email that says, "Thank you very much, but we've chosen somebody else," and so that it feels so harsh, and I think I understand from a recruiter standpoint how hard this is too, because I know for every rec open now, instead of getting 20 or 30 or 50 resumes, the number of resumes can be in the hundreds, but there's a community of people behind the rejections and behind the applications that are feeling really not feeling very good about that, and then to switch out of the folks that are interviewing to some of the folks that have gotten jobs, what they see, because we're moving so fast, and they see the hiring process, and it sometimes feels arbitrary. So I know, um, when I ran an HR department and we had interview processes going, that sometimes managers would not put the enough effort's not quite the right word, enough attention into the job spec. And so halfway through the process, they'd go like, "Well, this isn't really what I'm looking for." And then you've got to first you've got to go back and tell all of the people that you've interviewed, "Well, never mind, just kidding. This isn't we weren't you weren't really what we were looking for." And then you've got the people inside who then it feels to them like, "Wait, what? This is we thought this is what our group needed. Now you're gonna hire something different." So it feels arbitrary and it feels unfair. And so that's going on as well, again, because of speed. And so and Gen Z is not afraid to say this process felt unfair.
Well, good for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm totally cheerleading that kind of response because that's what we need. We need people to speak up. So I think and it's interesting because some of their stuff too, I'm sure you've seen it, has gone viral when they've had a bad interview or when they've received some really bizarre feedback after an interview or the way people have closed them out, that type of thing. They have no problem sharing the interactions with that company.
I agree, and I'm hoping that we reach an equilibrium
Yeah.
where a lot of the things that Gen Z values they're great things, right? Wouldn't you like work-life balance? Like, and wouldn't you like transparency? Yes, I would. So that some of those things become cultural norms. We're just in that transition space where it's not so easy. But think about interviewing transparency and taking the time to put together a process that benefited everybody. Wouldn't that be wonderful? That would be wonderful.
Well, and I don't think that it's such a hard step to follow. Okay, first of all, who are the ATS companies? And I think that anybody watching this episode needs to look at what their ATS is capable of and who is the company that is producing this ATS that they're working with that they can add either some sort of a software, a revision to their software or whatever it is, or switch ATS companies if they need to, that's going to provide feedback to the candidates. Feedback that's almost specific to why they're. I did a thing this morning. In fact, I had 38 people I had to reach back out to on a position I'm working on. So what I did is I grouped them together, and it didn't take that long, honestly. And I did it through LinkedIn because LinkedIn allows you to create your own feedback. So there was a group of people that weren't going to fit because they didn't have enough experience, and then the others didn't have the right type of experience. So I actually crafted two separate messages for each group and sent them out all together. So I just had two messages, but all 30 people were contacted.
Bravo, that is just amazing, and that is wonderful, and I don't think that we take that step often enough, and
No. But the ATS companies should be able to incorporate something that allows us to do that. to group people together or to at least create some sort of a feedback loop that says, hey, we have your resume. We've got a zillion of them. Make it funny if you need to. We've got a zillion of them we have to go through. We will be reading your resume. We just want to let you we have it. And if we want to interview you, we'll be in contact. If you don't hear from us, we'll keep your resume for another position. Something generic. Just let them know you have it, right? And then when you're closing the position out, then let people know, hey, we hired somebody, but we may have other positions open. Just give them something.
100%, 100% agree with you. That would help all around so much. And it will also give people an idea what they need to do differently. So, oh, maybe I shouldn't apply to this kind of job because I don't really have the experience. I should start looking for something different. Or I need to go back and figure out how I can get some more experience. Maybe I volunteer somewhere or I get a certification. And I think it would help lots of people not shoot in the dark. And like the theme for this, like it would absolutely increase trust. And so
It would. And that's what we need to work on. We need to work on because the trust cycle has broken here. And like I said, not just for early to career applicants and candidates and new employees, but also for people who are returning to work, who've been out of work for a while, moms who are maybe they had, like you said, a law degree or a finance degree or whatnot, but they took time off to raise kids and now they want to get back to work. They're in the same boat.
speaking about Gen Z specifically, there is another new sort of phenomenon happening that is it's very difficult and it's not necessarily a trust issue, but it's a very difficult issue, and that is entry level jobs. I'm filled with statistics today, but 35% of all entry level jobs now say 1 to 3 years of experience. That's not an entry level job. That's a job where you have 1 to 3 years of experience. So these poor college grads are trying to apply for those jobs because they're listed as entry level, but really those are for folks who've been out a couple of years who are looking for their second job. And so just trying to figure out how to help the folks that are graduating from college navigate their way through the hiring process would be so beneficial. So that's sort of another thing that I think is it's sort of culture versus finance, right? So it's years and years and years ago, there was all kinds of on-campus recruiting, and there were many more internship programs, and so kids coming out of school were more capable, more ready to take on some of the jobs, and now a lot of that's gone away, and so again, it's on the shoulders of the young person to try to figure out maybe what they need while they're still in school, so maybe they can get an internship that will maybe count a little bit towards that 1 to 3 years of experience. So, again, I know that from a cost perspective, that stuff is expensive, but trying to help leadership understand that yes, you can shave some cost off initially, but strategically, especially because this is gonna be 50% of the workforce, if you don't bring in people and somehow figure out how to train them and create loyalty, then when the next people get promoted because somebody retired, you're gonna have a big old hole, and so that's another issue that if it's not creating a trust problem, it's creating a lot of consternation for people that are trying to get into the workplace.
Let me ask you a question though. You brought up something interesting. And I haven't heard about this. I've been asking people, what happened to the internships at the colleges? Why aren't there more internships now?
So I as part of sort of my continuing education for myself so I can help young people in this area, I have just reached out to a whole bunch of people that are recruiters, like early career recruiters at a bunch of companies. And what I am hearing is it's more expense than they're willing to take on right now because they're not hiring as many early career professionals. So it used to be you'd go to campus because you knew you were gonna hire 5, 6, 7 entry level positions. But now a lot of the companies are not hiring that many people, so going on campus to try to do on-campus recruiting is the math doesn't math anymore. So what the last young man I talked to who's was is running an early career program for a big accounting firm in the Midwest told me that where they're spending their money is they'll go out and they'll do a career day. So they'll just once go out and talk about this is what our firm does and this is the kinds of jobs we have and but that's all they do. So they create awareness, but they're not there's no longer as easy a path to try to apply and get a role. So again, it's just it's a cost at least from what I'm understanding, it's a cost benefit analysis, and it's been replaced for I don't know if you know, there's a website called Handshake. So a handshake is so a handshake for anybody on the line that doesn't know, Handshake is a career or a job website just for people putting up jobs for college. And so kids go out there and they look for what's on Handshake, but again, then you're creating that same problem where you're just applying into the ether. You don't know how many people are applying, you're not hearing back, and it was much better when you could because if when companies came to campus, you'd have to dress up and go have an interview with somebody, so you was a learning experience there has eroded, and so again, so when it's just it's pushing early career professionals further and further back in terms of the ease with which they can get hired because now they gotta find another way to mock interview so that when they actually do get to the real thing, they're presenting themselves well, and as we know, an interview an interview's got some special things in it, and what I see in the young folks I help they treat an interview like a test. They try to memorize every answer, and then they'll know the right answer. But, like, as you know, an interview is not a test. An interview is about building a relationship as quickly as you can so that somebody knows that they can depend on you, you'll be able to do the work, and they'd like to work with you. And those are very different answers to questions than spouting statistics or trying to figure out something that's got an answer like you would answer a question on an exam at school.
So who do we have in terms of companies? We have outplacement companies, right, that help people kind of prepare for interviews and prepare resumes and whatnot. I don't know of any outplacement companies though that are offering similar programs though to early career professionals. And we need that. We need that because we need to be able to go into the schools, into the colleges, and set up career days and do nothing but mock interviews with them so that they have one of the issues too I see with the younger generations is the fact that because they are doing so much digitally, they have less opportunity for face to face. It's hurting their ability to have eye contact, long-term eye contact. Their sentences are shorter. They aren't able to articulate as well or have longer sentences when they're communicating with people. So just that type of coaching and education as well to kind of get them ready to have move from a completely digital culture that they've been living in into a combined culture of digital and face to face and verbal interaction and eye contact, that type of thing, handshakes, the things that we all learned early on or that we tried to coach people on early on.
Absolutely,
When I worked
absolutely.
for us, yeah, a company years ago, we had our own internal college team, and they did just that. They were helping students prepare for interviews, teaching them how to shake hands, teaching them how to have eye contact, teaching them how to pause if they didn't know the answer to something instead of just trying to remember or memorize, like you're saying, answers to questions that they perceived were going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely, and way back when companies did that, really, it's a wonderful long-term strategy because if you help someone, even if you don't hire them, they're gonna go somewhere else and be able to learn and grow, and then maybe you are gonna hire them in a higher level role at some point. What's that expression? Rising water rises all boats, right? Like, so you help and then it just creates a better workforce. But to answer your question about is anyone doing that? There are a few places I've found. young woman who graduated from, I believe, USC, and she started something on a very small level like this because of how much trouble she had when she graduated. And then I know a guy out of LA who helps athletes, only student athletes, to find jobs. But f as in terms of lots of overall programs, I don't think they're there anymore. I think that's one of the reasons people reach out to me, and doing it one at a time while I love this, I wish I could do it on a bigger scale. So if anybody's for listening, wants to plan something on a bigger scale, I'm in if you want help.
Hey, I'm in. I'd be happy to help. I would be happy to help on that. I would love that. There is a here in Arizona, there is the Arizona State University has what they call their E&I Edson and Innovation program that they're starting right now too for young people who are interested in having a mentorship. So it is a mentorship program for early career professionals, but it's also for people who have invented things. They want people to come forward with their inventions. Yeah. And I know a young girl, she's 11 going on 12 years old, and she invented a playground with 2 other students for kids with disabilities, physical disabilities. And they created 50 components to this playground. And so I'm pushing her to yeah, bring her invention forward with the other 2 kids so that
That's
ASU can interview them.
that's amazing, and see, that's why I get I get between frustrated and upset and sad when leadership in companies now basically dismiss this generation. There was an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal a couple of days ago where the guy that wrote the op-ed basically said that nobody that's graduating from college right now is capable of, like, doing real work. And okay, he can have his opinion, but there were 671 comments. I read it online, and I got through about 50 of them, and not one person presented a contrary view. Everybody was like, "Yeah, I had to work hard, and nobody does anymore, and these kids are useless," and it's not true, and it's
No,
the
it's
responsibility
not.
on all of us in the workplace to try to come to the middle, and maybe this generation requires a little bit more coaching, but there's value that this generation has that other generations haven't, and one of the things that you hear all the time is they're tech savvy, and with AI coming in right now, who better to figure out how to prompt the AI tools and build the AI tools besides this generation? So um, we really need to come to the middle and understand that there's ways to interact with each other so that we can solve problems together. And some companies are doing things like cross-generational operational groups. So like the whole group will help make company decisions, like maybe things like what your performance review will look like, or whether or not you'll have any kind of hybrid work time, or where you get everybody's needs and opinions on the table instead of, this goes back to the issue about trust. Instead of just the person at the top making the decisions without really paying attention to the folks that are still down in the trenches.
Well, and I think too, we need to also give a lot of kudos and attention to those leaders that are creating programs and creating valuable workplace, experiences for people coming into the workforce, into their companies, whether it be early career or people, like I said, returning to work, or people who've just been out of work, or people who are looking even for contract work, that type of thing. People who are kind of bridging those gaps instead of pointing fingers, instead of insulting either leadership or the young people. Just, I mean, we really need to focus on who is making this work. There are companies out there that are doing it. Who are they? We need to be giving them a lot of attention and praise. And then also waterfalling down what they're doing that's working to other companies, the other organizations, so that other people can kind of pick up the pace here. Because like you said, we can do this. We can do this.
We can do this. And it's interesting. Corn Ferry coined this term in something that they wrote. They call it generational intelligence. And they had this big quote on this document I read that said, the companies that will win in the future will develop generational intelligence. And what they mean by that is being able to get over all this generational friction and like take the talents of everyone and use those to make the company incredible. I talked to a young woman yesterday who I'm helping, and she's got a background like you as a recruiter, me as a recruiter, you would salivate over. Her background's amazing. She could have a job anywhere. And it's the middle of senior year, and she started just looking for jobs. And what she said to me was, I want to look for a job where I know that the culture is going to respect me and allow me to be myself and grow and where I can enjoy work and I can feel value and like I'm making a difference. And so she is searching for companies where if you go on their websites, they talk about honestly about culture because culture, it's real easy to say, oh, employees are the highest asset and not mean it, but like you can tell. And she's doubling back by when she finds companies like that, trying to go on LinkedIn and find somebody that actually works there to see if it's actually true. And so there are companies out there, and they are they are drawing the the best and the brightest young folks towards them. Everyone all over the company is included and included in decision making and incredibly happy, and they're doing really, really well.
Well, and not only that, but whatever position they're hired for, going back to the whole trust factor. So they have a good, I guess, interview cycle. They have a good feedback loop. And not only that, but when they are hired, they're putting them through rotational programs where they get to work in other positions and have an opportunity to see how the company is run. So even if the position that they were hired for isn't maybe like right on to what they want to continue to do, the company gives them an opportunity to explore other areas of the business.
That's wonderful because when you do, like, you jump from lily pad to lily pad, but when you finally do get your full-time job, so much about how the rest of the business runs that it makes you that much better an employee. And I think rotational programs are amazing, and they have also been cut back. I was gonna say gone the way of the dinosaur, but it's not quite that bad.
They need to come back.
Yeah, they need to come back. They absolutely need to come back, and I think that if I had one thing to say to leadership that might be listening is, please try to think about the long game here, because right now, last year, 1,500,000 people were laid off. That's a lot of people that have got to be reabsorbed into the workplace. But they will be reabsorbed, and once they're reabsorbed, then who's left is this entering Gen Z, young millennial population, and if we don't pay attention to them, it may be 3, 4 years from now before you feel the pain, but it'll bite you, so thinking about the long game now, like, will allow you to win, like Corn Ferry said. So that's my hope and my request.
Well, and I love their term generational intelligence. That okay, so we need to like kind of like start spreading that around more. That needs to become a thing.
Yeah,
Generational intelligence. I
yeah.
love that. But I think conversations like this, sharing our conversation with other people, gives leaders and other people in talent acquisition and HR a moment on things that they can do with their ATSs for better feedback. We need better feedback. We need to stop the ghosting. Okay, we need to let people know that we have received their resume. We need to let them know that they are not falling into a black hole, that they are there and present, that maybe they aren't the perfect candidate for the position we're interviewing for currently, but there's other opportunities. Continue to look. Oh, and I love those. Somebody had posted a response that they got from an ATS, and it was a digital response, but it basically said, hey, we've received a lot of resumes, contact you if we want to set up an interview, but sign up to receive other like it's they had an agent, some sort of an agent on their ATS. Sign up to get other notifications on other positions that are open so that we can stay in touch with you, right? There are now Ford Aerospace does that. Ford Aerospace, I guess, has a great, I don't know what their ATS is, but their ATS will, I mean, constantly be giving people notifications on new positions, that type of thing. So it kind of keeps people in the loop. They feel like There is a trust factor there that develops as a result of this.
Absolutely, and it's like, fatty is a long game, right? Because so you don't get the first job, you might not get the second or the third job, but you will remember that company with such good feelings that when you decide a year from now, 2 years from now, you wanna switch jobs, you'll go back and look at what they have because you know they care about you, and so it's it really is incumbent upon, I think, us as HR people to be to kinda help be the conscience and help build some of this trust and help make it happen
Yeah,
because
I
I
agree
think
with
a
you.
lot of leadership is going for speed and cost, and that's fine, except it can't be at the exclusion of, like, trust and transparency and loyalty and the people side of it.
On the people side. Well, and not only that, but I think that people are complaining, well, now that we have AI supported tools and software and the ATS again, it's really difficult to be able to weed through so many resumes, and that's why we have the AI that's screening resumes. Well, if AI is screening resumes, what's happening there? Where's the gap on that? There obviously is a problem because they're not screening the resumes correctly. Because number one, we're missing out on some good talent if the talent hasn't done their resume hasn't crafted a really good resume to send to the company, but maybe they've got the right skills. So AI is missing out on that.
If you get creative, I completely agree with you. We years ago when I was at Intel, we would do what we when we had to face the same kind of thing, we'd do what we called blitzed interviews. We'd just bring in lots and lots of people, and then we'd get a little bit of an understanding of who they were, and so then we would they had an experience interviewing, we would know who they were kind of off a piece of paper, and that's how we handled some of the, like we got massive amounts of applications, but you're 100% right. There's an obligation in there that I think that we're not paying attention to. That's what colleges do. Colleges get jillions of applications for the seats available in college, and they take their administrative team, and for like, I don't know, the month of March or something, February and March, they read applications all day long so that every kid gets a fair chance, and so building something kinda like that, I think not only benefits early career professionals, but kind of benefits everybody that's trying to apply right now.
Exactly, and then going back to the career fairs, I mean, you can't say enough about those, especially from a one-on-one interview opportunity, having kids I mean, and creating career days at the schools. I mean, it's not gonna cost you that much. It's just not, and if you don't have the intern programs available, and I still scratch my head on why that's happening. I mean, I'm sorry, you okay, for example, I recall many years ago at ASU again, because that's where I went to school, and it's close by. There was a guy there, and he worked for Texas Instruments, and Arizona State University had hired him for the engineering college. So he was in there teaching kids about engineering and whatnot, but they had in their labs, they had Intel equipment set up so that the kids could learn how to do whatever their engineering responsibilities were on that equipment. And then from there, the people who graduated and who were the most adept at using that equipment were the people Intel would actually go and interview them on site because they were working with their equipment, and then they would hire them out of college and then just put them onto their equipment. Now they had internships, and they also had the new what they called RCG, recent college grad. They had the positions open that didn't require 1 to 3 years experience, but they had already gained some of that experience working on that equipment in those engineering labs. Now, do we have the same thing going on with other tech companies?
From what I know, a lot of that stuff has been, abandoned's the wrong word, but it's gotten much less popular. There's a lot of people that have experience that can be put into jobs where they don't have to be trained. And I know that some of the community colleges are working with some of the big companies on um, more tech-like positions, like teaching them how to work in a clean room. So there's classes that you can take so that when you want to apply for that kind of job, but the kinds of things that you just described, I'm not aware that that's happening as much as it used to happen years ago. Would and it's too bad because like you said, it might cost you money now, but there's so many knock-on benefits that it seems that that would be a good use of your money. We've touched on all of the points where you could solve this problem. So, right, you could ask employers to do rotation programs and have internships. That's wonderful. You could ask colleges to partner with industry and try to get the industry to wait, like create not even paid internships, but learning opportunities so that when you graduated more than just with your coursework, you could put some of this on us as HR and recruiter people to say do something like make sure that in every interview or batch of resumes that you're giving to a manager, there's somebody that's a recent college grad so that just so that they would sort of see a comparison. So I think there's touch points all along the way and we just okay, my role now is to try right now, like I said, right now I'm working one person at a time, and that is wonderful, but I am also going to try as I move deeper into this role to try to figure out ways that I can have more impact than one kid at a time, and that
Well, I'm happy to join you if you
okay.
come up with something because honestly, yeah, I think that we really do. We need to get out there and help to educate the younger people, and they educate us as well. Like I
Yes,
said,
absolutely.
yeah, I know an 11-year-old who's going on 12, and she's alpha. Okay, she's alpha,
Yep, that's
and
how that's alpha.
and she invented a playground. How many other kids are like her out there that we don't know about? Because we hear all the complaints, right? But there's a lot of good stuff that's going on
Oh,
that we need to fluff
there's
that up.
there's wonderful stuff out there, and we all just have to you know, we all have to open our eyes. The incumbent generations have always complained about the entering generations, like, when they were talking about millennials, they were saying, "Millennials are soft, and they're that generation where everybody got a trophy just for showing up, and they take pictures of their avocado toast for breakfast," but they the complaints were all about their personalities. They were never derided about their work ethic or their intelligence or their ability to do the job.
Or
That's
their
the difference.
ideas.
Right, that's the difference with Gen Z. For some reason, they're being beat up about their ability to do the work, and I really don't think I don't think they're any different. I think they're even smarter, and so
They are smart. They're
we've
very
all
smart.
like I keep saying, we've all just got to meet in the middle or we're gonna have a problem several years from now.
Well, and I think people need to start speaking up too about those companies that are doing well,
Yes, I think that's a brilliant idea.
shedding more light on that so that people are like having this moments, well, heck, they can do it, so can we. I mean, the fear of missing out, FOMO might kick in. Who knows?
Yeah, or the, "Wow, this is a competitive advantage, and I'd really better get my arms around this competitive advantage," and we can I can do some of that right now. I write for LinkedIn several times a week, and I think maybe, thank you very much, for the next week or 2 or 3, maybe I will try to find some of these companies and just highlight them.
Your posts are amazing, and I just want to just real quick here. Besides, oh, your book is called "Play the Game," right? And so, just real quick, helping early career professionals tackle workforce challenges. So, parents or and anybody who is watching, somebody who can use this book, Play the Game by Ellen Raim. And then also, you had a post I loved. Your boss can't remember what it's like to be an employee at your level. I love that post. It's like, oh, whoops.
Right, they can yeah, it's like I use behavioral science to really look into that. The higher up you move, the less you remember what it's like to be an employee, and so that, again, is why there's a big portion of this that belongs to HR to kind of be the conscience, to kind of kinda hold all the generations and the culture together.
Exactly. Yeah, because we need that trust cycle to get back on,
Absolutely,
you
to
know.
go right back
Yes.
to the beginning, we need trust is one of the biggest coins of the realm in every organization, and we need to keep trust,
Yeah, we do.
especially in how wonky the world is right now and the economy is right now. Trust is really important.
It's so huge. So huge. Definitely. Oh my gosh, Ellen, this has been a remarkable conversation. I think it kind of went off in a couple different directions, but that's okay. You know, it was good. It was very good. Yeah, and I think
Interesting
that
perspective.
yeah, no problem. And I'm super happy to collaborate with you on anything that you're
Okay,
doing to help the next generation.
okay.
Definitely.
I'm
All
gonna
right.
hold you through that.
No, please do. Please do. All right.